Welcome to the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen, covering the week that was in professional wrestling. Hello everybody, and this is a very special edition of the Juice Box. Of course, I am Juice Springsteen, and it's January. It's my birthday month, but it's also, more importantly, Royal Rumble season. So, a very special Royal Rumble retrospective, say that 5 times fast, with yours truly and the one, the only, Josh Isenberg. How are you, brother?
Juice, it is Royal Rumble week. I am close to arriving in Indianapolis, excited for the weekend that is ahead of us, and it's going to be a wonderful weekend, but I'm excited to talk a little retrospect on some of the memorable moments, some of the memorable matches that the Royal Rumble has produced for us. Absolutely, man. You know, we've done on Triple Threat Theater with Donnie and Josh Cross, SummerSlam kind of retrospective where we talk about our favorite matches and such. We also did that with WrestleMania this past year because it was the 40th WrestleMania. Well, did not have that penciled in for Royal Rumble, so what better time than to dive in with what we're going to do today, our 5 favorite Royal Rumble pay-per-views in general, our top 5, in maybe not from 5 to 1, but our 5 favorite Royal Rumble matches as a whole, and then probably my favorite part of this, our 5 favorite non-Rumble matches that took place at the pay-per-view. There's a lot of those to go around. Once we got out of the late 80s, they really started to beef up the matches that happened at the Rumble. So we're going to go from favorite Rumble shows as a whole to our favorite Rumble matches, and then we'll end, like I said, with the non-Rumble matches that stole the show. So I will kick things off. There's not going to be any order other than our number 1. So I'm going to go kind of chronologically and throw these things back and forth. We'll figure out where we're at, and I'm sure we're going to overlap because we have similar tastes. We might disagree, but we have similar tastes, wouldn't you say? I would say so. I think that's accurate.
So let's kick things off. So 5 favorite Rumble pay-per-views. I mean, the Royal Rumble pay-per-view or PLE, WrestleMania, of course, is what it is. It's a stalwart. It's never going to be topped. And then SummerSlam, also pretty high on the list, also happened in 1988, similar to Royal Rumble when it had its inception. So it's funny because Survivor Series is the oldest of the other 3, coming out in 1987. But the Royal Rumble, man, this is an event that if you can't go to it live, it's probably the best event to watch on TV. But if you can go to it live, I'd wager it's arguably number 1A behind WrestleMania in terms of live viewing. So how do you feel about that before we dive in? How do you feel about watching the Rumble live? You're going to see one here in a couple of days. I think you were at the 2014 one and a couple others. So how different is the Royal Rumble compared to every other huge show you've been to?
The Royal Rumble for me is number 1 in terms of viewing experience, whether you're on your couch, but it is absolutely my favorite being live. Being at 2014, then also I was there at 2019 in Phoenix. That was I still have the chair that I got from the floor seats thanks to a good brother with a ticket hookup back in the day. That chair has been with me ever since. I think the biggest thing about the Royal Rumble being live and in person viewing it is, it's so simplistic, but the countdown always gets you so excited because they always have surprises. They always have returns. There's always the unexpected, even when you think you're expecting it, whether it's somebody debuting in WWE or somebody coming back from injuries. It is the ultimate viewing experience in person. The WrestleMania obviously is that big grand spectacle, but there are times that drags on a little too much, especially now being 2 nights of almost 4 hours. The Royal Rumble hits hard and consistently takes you through that 3.5 hour pay-per-view PLE with just excitement every single time. And I think they've done a great job of simplifying the card where you only have 4 or 5 matches because the Rumble matches, men's and women's, typically take about an hour. So you're there, you're always engaged, you're always interacted. Just need to make sure that you may hold in your bathroom break a little bit, but yeah, it's a great event.
Absolutely, man. And it's funny that you mentioned the countdown aspect because it goes further than the Royal Rumble. I'm not sure if you were there. I feel like you probably were, but Extreme Rules 2018
Yeah.
that took place in Pittsburgh had a 30-minute Iron Man match. And it's funny because Pittsburgh also had a 60-minute Iron Man match back in '09, but this was not the same case here, where at every last 10 seconds of every minute of that 30-minute Iron Man match between Rollins and Ziggler, the fans counted down from 10 to 0 as if it were the Rumble. And it kind of threw off WWE because they took down the clock. The crowd was absolutely overtaking the match, and then once they put the clock back up for the regular, the time there, the fans went nuts, and it was, acknowledging, hey, we can't stop what the fans want to do. So having this type of match, it's just a great match innovation. I believe Pat Patterson was the guy that came up with it, a legendary figure in pro wrestling, of course, first Intercontinental Champion as well. But this match type, man, it sells the show. It's crazy because it sells the show, and you don't ever know who's going to win. You might think you know, but it's always really just it's luck. If you're trying to pick, like, the former Wrestle Rumble used to do, you always have your Rumble picks. There's always people doing pools and stuff. So it's always a fun time, man. And I can't wait to get into this with you. So I'm going to start off with one of my favorite Royal Rumble overall shows. Has to be from 1997, the Alamo Dome, San Antonio, Texas. This was a fun show. We had a little bit of everything. You had a 6-man lucha match. You had Shawn Michaels winning back the WWF Championship in his hometown against Psycho Sid. You had Vader and The Undertaker in a one-on-one match. And then how can I forget the Royal Rumble match itself, where Steve Austin wins. He last eliminates Bret Hart, who, they had such a huge feud at the end of 96 into 97. And, of course, they had their match at WrestleMania 13. Steve Austin wins this match for the Royal Rumble and ends up not actually getting that title match for a lot of reasons that we will not touch on this show. But, man, Austin eliminating people and being the last guy in there for a while and just kind of looking at his wrist like, hey, who's next? And then you get that great moment. Bret Hart comes out. The facial expression that Steve Austin has there is just very memorable to me. And just a great overall show. Very hyped crowd. And I loved the look of that show with the Alamo Dome. And, maybe someone else, he might put another Alamo Dome show on this as well. But 97 for me, I think, is one of my favorites for sure.
Yeah, 97 was memorable, and obviously with Stone Cold Steve Austin, it makes me think of what he's done in his career. Everybody talks about Mr. WrestleMania, Shawn Michaels, and nicknames are basically assigned to individuals who perform at the highest of levels on one specific event. And it's hard to argue that Stone Cold was not Mr. Royal Rumble, being the only 3-time winner. So that makes me go to 2001. New Orleans, Louisiana, where Stone Cold Steve Austin won his 3rd Royal Rumble match, and nobody has won 3 since then. But when you look at this card, it was an incredible card from top to bottom because you started off the night with a banger, a quick 10-minute match between the Dudley Boys and Edge and Christian. And then you also had the great ladder match between Chris Jericho and Chris Benoit. But I think the biggest thing for me in this 2001 is, yes, Stone Cold winning, but the WWE Championship match between Kurt Angle and Triple H really solidified both guys as top-tier performers. I mean, you look at 01 and you see big names like Stone Cold, Kurt Angle, Triple H, Kane, Undertaker. They were
Drew Carey.
I'm sorry?
Drew Carey.
And Drew Carey, yes, exactly. The wonderful Drew Carey.
All in favor, baby.
Yeah, so I think 2001 was one of my favorites because when you see Royal Rumble cards at times, you typically get 1 or 2 matches that stand out. This one was very high rated for me because it wasn't just about the Royal Rumble match. It was the, Chris Jericho becoming the IC champion, really, again, getting himself to another level in WWE after he debuted, a year and a half prior. So a lot of great matches top to bottom. And when you look at New Orleans, they're always a great crowd. This was a great crowd for them in 2001.
Absolutely. And just to touch on that ladder match is one of the best you'll ever see. Additionally, the poster harkens back to the old posters of 91 and 92 fame, which that artwork, that drawn up artwork of all the wrestlers coming down, which is funny. Just a sidebar, that actual artwork was previously owned by SIP Series interviewee Wrestling for Sale, and then he sold that to One Bad Bunny. So that is an awesome piece of artwork. Yeah, a little piece of artwork going out to a huge artist. So I love that, celebrities even at such a high level really love pro wrestling. Like it transcends a lot. And another quick thing, you mentioned Chris Jericho, how it kind of launched him into a higher stratosphere. That was at the beginning of '01. At the end of that year, he beat The Rock and Steve Austin in the same night to win the Undisputed Championship. So, good on you, man. That was a great call, seeing that Jericho ended up being, at the top of his game at the end of this year. So a great beginning for sure. Now I'm going to dive into the year previous. And this, we might talk about this show later on in my top 5 non-Rumble matches, but Royal Rumble 2000, I love everything about this. And we're probably going to talk about another Rumble that happened at the Garden as well. But damn, dude, I love everything about this show. In a future episode of the Juice Box that I have not recorded yet, but I've been waiting to, I'm going to discuss the 5 wrestling shows that define me as a fan. And for various reasons, and this show is one of them, purely because, long story short, my dad played deck hockey when I was growing up, and the venue that he would play at, the owner of that would buy pay-per-views and tape them. And 2 shows were given to me on VHS from this owner, and one of them was Royal Rumble 2000. So I would watch this show all the time, over and over again, and I can't get enough of it. The Royal Rumble itself, kind of interesting. You get Taka Michinoku getting annihilated, and they replay that probably 4 or 5 times, which is amazing. The street fight, of course, Triple H, Cactus Jack. I don't think there's much more to be said about that match. And you get a great first ever tag team tables match between the Dudleys and Hardys with another great moment in there. Taz debuts. You get Miss Rumble 2000, which I'll leave that to the imagination. And I will say this, USA Network put out a tweet the other day, favorite Rumble logos, and good Lord, the last 6 have been the exact same with a little tweak here and there. But the all lowercase Royal Rumble, because, that was what it was, the new millennium. It was a new era. I love the lowercase Royal Rumble aesthetic for 2000. So I was here for that, man. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that Rumble before you go into your next one?
Yeah, I think WrestleMania 2000 was interesting. Royal Rumble 2000 was interesting because WrestleMania 2000 was every McMahon in the corner, so they were really building up the Royal Rumble to really spotlight more than just one person. And I think that was a very important thing. Triple H and Cactus Jack tore the house down at Madison Square Garden. You see WrestleMania 2000 as kind of in the middle of Attitude Era, but like teasing a little bit of ruthless aggression. So I think it was, a couple of years, from 99, 2000, and 2002, 2003, they're kind of slowly moving into that. But you're right. The inaugural tag team tables match was fantastic. Seeing the fact that, Chyna and Jericho fought for the undisputed Intercontinental Championship wasn't a long match, but didn't need to be a long match. And then obviously The Rock and Big Show really finishing out that card. There was not really a down point in this match, on this card. I even forgot about Taz debuting. Sadly, he didn't really pan out the way that people thought he would. That pop was electric whenever he came into New York because he's from that area. A really solid card from top to down. But one thing I think about in 2000, I wonder if WrestleMania 2000 changed because of the outcome of The Rock and Big Show's finish. Did they pivot to a fatal 4-way, or did they already have it in mind that WrestleMania 2000 would be Triple H, Rock, Big Show, and Mankind, Mick Foley? Something to consider. I don't know if they pivoted after that. Which again.
Well, go ahead, keep going.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'm just reading the Wikipedia of it all. It says the unintentional botched move was worked into the feud where Big Show began claiming Rock touched first.
Yeah.
So because they had that indisputable evidence, which was a different camera shot, that Big Show got a match with Rock at No Way Out, and then I think they kind of played off of that to the final. That's why this show, the Royal Rumble in general, as we continue to talk about it, is great because it's the quote road to WrestleMania starts there, but there's always a show in between just in case something happens or just in case something changes in that 1.5 months from Rumble before the February or March show to Mania. So you have a little bit of wiggle room to course correct, make sure all your ducks are in a row before you get to WrestleMania. So yeah, they capitalize on a botch, if you will, but hey, anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation.
Anything can happen in live television, yeah. And I think WrestleMania 2000, or excuse me, again, man, I don't know why I say that. Royal Rumble.
You love that show, man. You want to talk about that? Come on.
I mean, there was no singles matches, but it's fine. But when I think about Royal Rumbles, one of the things I always think about is moments. And the next one that I'm going to talk about is specifically because of a moment. I think that Royal Rumble 2007 with Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker finishing out, again, in San Antonio, not at the Alamo Dome.
I considered this.
What's that?
I said I definitely considered this one based off of what you're about to talk about, which is funny.
Yeah. It's at the point where both of those guys are very well established. They're very much, still top tier guys, but other people are coming up, So when I see WrestleMania, WrestleMania with the winner of this match obviously being The Undertaker with a great match against Batista, you also had Shawn Michaels, who found himself in a match against John Cena, probably because of Triple H's injury at New Year's Revolution just a few weeks later. Because I do think they were going to go with Cena and Triple H again. You have two guys finishing the Royal Rumble match in electric atmosphere, and the fact that they gave them time as the final two guys to put on a clinic, I think catapulted WWE to think these two guys have magic together, which made two of the best WrestleMania matches of all time, 25 and 26, between Shawn and The Undertaker. And also, you got to say, that Rumble match was fantastic, but you also look at John Cena versus Umaga.
Yes,
that was a really
I was going to say that
match.
That's one of the best non-Rumble matches ever. And it's spoiler, it's not in my list, but I could easily swap out any of the matches, to be honest with you. It's a wonderful match.
Yeah, so 2007 for me is always very memorable. It's a very rewatchable one because there's a lot of good players in it. But again, it goes back to the final 4 or 5 minutes between Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker, which we'd see their two-match back-to-back at 25 and 26. Again, most people say WrestleMania 25 between The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels was one of the best WrestleMania matches of all time, and it's very, very hard to argue that. So I think this gave them the idea that these guys, without championships, you can put streak versus career at 26, they make magic together.
Absolutely, man, and it's nice that you brought that up because it did. It's I doubt that they had it in mind, but like you said, they probably realized, as if they didn't have chemistry before. I mean, they had Shawn Michaels and Undertaker, pronouns pal. They had, the first ever Hell in a Cell match. They've had feuds before. So they've worked together as dance partners, but over 10 years later, and you see how electric just the final two men in the Royal Rumble were, that the last 5 minutes of that Royal Rumble match was practically its own match, and like you said, it kind of maybe sparked something. Hey, maybe we got something here, and it led to only 2 years later to arguably the two greatest WrestleMania matches either guy had back to back. So yeah, wonderful choice there with 2007. And man, that Cena Umaga match still holds up today. And it's so damn crazy that we're still here. Look, I mean, Jacob Fatu coming in, and the bloodline and the Samoan dynasty never ceases to amaze me, where, one falls, one's not around anymore, and just 15 more show up. And it's like, it's the lineage, man. It's wild. So good choice there. I'm going to go into a little further back from what you had. My next one is Royal Rumble 2003. This was an interesting show, to say the least. This is from Boston, Massachusetts. This overall show I thought was really solid. I enjoyed the Brock Lesnar Big Show match to start, especially considering we got the same match to start Royal Rumble 2014, which we may or may not talk about later on. And Brock Lesnar, of course, gets the win in the Royal Rumble, last eliminating The Undertaker, goes on to win the world title at WrestleMania 19. And this was revealed most recently on Chris Van Vliet's podcast with Kurt Angle, which has been circulating a lot recently. Kurt Angle revealing that his match with Chris Benoit in this Royal Rumble pay-per-view was one of, if not his greatest match. And he said Benoit was arguably his greatest opponent, because if there was anybody that, sold as hard, worked as hard, just performed as hard as Angle did, it was Benoit. And he said it was like wrestling himself. And, he says, absolutely. And he says, his three eyes, intensity as being one of them. That's exactly what both guys brought. And these guys had one of their greatest matches together here at Royal Rumble 2003. So not too much else on this show is really worth being memorable, but the first match, the Angle Benoit match, and then of course the Royal Rumble to close it out, I think were really top tier. So that's my next choice, was 2003.
Yeah, and I believe that 2003 Royal Rumble, because for whatever reason I have a weird mind and remember very obscure things. The apron was Cincinnati Bengals colors. Weren't they the orange and black ring apron for 2003 Royal Rumble? Do you recall that?
You might be right.
I feel
I'll
like
do some digging whenever you're going on to your next Royal Rumble.
Yeah, but anyway, my next Royal Rumble, my top five. I'm going to fast forward from 2007 to 10 years later in 2017, which was also in San Antonio. And this card from top to bottom just provided everything you wanted. You had the AJ Styles and John Cena match, which I think is one of the best singles matches in Royal Rumble history.
We might be talking about that match later.
I bet we will. And we also had Kevin Owens, who seemingly is in every Undisputed Championship match or Intercontinental Championship match in the Royal Rumble, also facing that night Roman Reigns. Flair and Bayley was a very just decent female match. But this 2017 at the Alamo Dome had The Undertaker, had Brock Lesnar, had Goldberg. And then you think of the winner, which was kind of surprising. People say it was underwhelming, but it really wasn't, because they were building up the Wyatt family so much where you knew Randy Orton was going to split from them. And at this point, Bray Wyatt was not WWE champion. He would win that a month and a half later at Elimination Chamber, which set up, Randy Orton breaking through and beating Bray Wyatt at WrestleMania 33. So I think 17 was great. One of the very underlying things, and I always remember this, is when Ty Dillinger came out at number 10 and they panned to a female in the audience who's like, who is that? And some guy's like, I don't know. But it was the fact that that was the first time, or first or second time maybe, that they really trying to implement NXT talent. And Ty Dillinger being super over at that point. I think the night before he was, or the last pay-per-view before that for NXT, he was just super over, super popular, a guy that had that one or two moments in WWE. But 2017 for me, just again, top to bottom, was a really great show. And I always remember the Rumble match, obviously, remember the Rumble in San Antonio, but also a lot of really good nuggets in that Rumble match.
Absolutely, man. And it's funny you brought up that Steve Austin is Mr. Royal Rumble, maybe with the match type, but to me, Kevin Owens is Mr. Royal Rumble. The last man standing match with Ambrose, his 3 matches with Roman Reigns. He had a great match with Logan Paul last year, and he's about to have a ladder match with Cody Rhodes for the Winged Eagle and Undisputed title. So his track record at the Royal Rumble is pretty damn crazy. This next one on my board here, it's just pretty much the next two I just have a place in my heart for different reasons. This one that is up next is 2006, and it's based pretty much on the Royal Rumble match. This was a day after my birthday. So that weekend, I'm sure I was just, going crazy. I just turned 13. So I'm in peak markdom for being a pro wrestling fan. And this is, a couple months, 2.5 months after Eddie Guerrero passed away, unfortunately. And of all people to win the Royal Rumble, even though you could say, oh, of course Rey Mysterio would win the Royal Rumble, like, of course they would do that. He was always just, and I know they played up, on the biggest little man thing, but you never thought Rey Mysterio could legitimately win the Royal Rumble, let alone at WrestleMania 22 actually win the world title. It was something that as a fan, sure, you thought it could do it, but would they actually do something like that? And it was wild. And I remember when Rey Mysterio won, it was just, I remember running through my house, just being a huge fan of Rey Mysterio, and just like, I couldn't believe WWE did it. And it was a wonderful moment. Additionally, on this show, you had Cena and Edge, with Edge just winning the world title, the WWE title at New Year's Revolution after cashing in the Money in the Bank for the first time ever that had been cashed in. Loses the title to Cena later on in the same month. And then we also closed the show because the Royal Rumble was in the middle of the show. Kurt Angle defeating Mark Henry, which it was what it was. But at the end of the show, the ring collapses, The Undertaker returns, and you eventually get that Undertaker-Kurt Angle No Way Out match, which, Oh, man, that is one hell of an underrated match with a great finish if you haven't seen it. So Royal Rumble 2006, I thought it was a wonderful show all around. Miami, Florida, January 29th, 06.
Great one. Yeah, a really memorable one. Interesting that they finished with the return of The Undertaker, but in retrospect, now you understand why. And then he goes on, obviously, to face Mark Henry in a casket match at WrestleMania 22. Edge loses the title, so he ends up going to WrestleMania to face Mick Foley in a hardcore match, which the Flaming Table and Joey Styles going, oh, my God. And just those memorable moments started at WrestleMania. But one of the most memorable moments, I think, for me in the past 15, 20 years of Royal Rumble matches or Royal Rumble events wasn't in a Royal Rumble match. I don't know if I ever heard a louder, sitting on my couch, a louder pop than when Sami Zayn hit Roman Reigns in the back to finish off Royal Rumble 2023. And Rumble 23 was a pretty solid card as well. Cody Rhodes obviously winning and becoming the number one contender for the Undisputed Championship, outlasting Gunther, who put on a clinic that night, who I think solidified himself as who he is now. But you also look, the pitch black match between Bray Wyatt and LA Knight was theatrical. It was what it was. Sadly enough, months later, we find out that Bray Wyatt's not healthy and, he leaves. But I think the biggest thing for me in this card is that theatrics that WWE provided at the last 5 or 6 minutes when Sami Zayn sees his friend Kevin Owens handcuffed to ropes and Roman saying, do it, hit him. The Alamo Dome, which, man, I wish I lived in San Antonio sometimes because they had some great Royal Rumble, PLEs. But that moment to me solidified this entire night. And when you saw Cody start the night and win the opportunity to face Roman Reigns for the championship at WrestleMania 39, you knew there was going to be something magical to end the night. And that hit on every aspect, where a lot of people wanted Sami to win the championship over Roman, at Elimination Chamber in his hometown, which that was another amazing reaction. Sami was never hotter during those 3 months. And Sami is still over like Rover, but at the same time, this moment was one of the best theatrical moments that I've ever seen in any Royal Rumble pay-per-view, PLE, whatever you want to call it. So I have 2023 just based on the moment that they gave us.
Right, man, and it's really unfortunate. That was Bray Wyatt's final match. And look, I was all in, man. I drank a pitch black Mountain Dew during the match. I buy into stuff like that, and it was fun. And it was a unique match, to say the least. I think as fans, we probably were more, maybe not disappointed, but just like, you want Bray Wyatt to be involved with something more, but at the same time, he is such a unique character that it lends itself to a match like that.
Yeah.
And I think looking back, we, are probably more grateful that the match at least even happened. Same with LA Knight having that, the distinction of having Bray Wyatt's final match. And they actually are just releasing the glow in the dark figure of Bray Wyatt from that show. So it's immortalized forever in figure form. Cody winning at the first of two back-to-back. Gunther having a legendary performance. Hell of a show. And the final moments. Again, when the Rumble is not the final match, something special is going to happen. And when you're in the thick of it with the Bloodline, and that was, we don't even know what inning they were in at that point, but it was just the beginning of one of the best pieces of that story with Sammy. Then he gets the chamber match, and then you get, Cody for the first time, and it just set off so many things in motion. So good choice there. Was that all 5 of yours, or did I start? You're going to have the last one.
I have the last one. You started.
Okay. So my final one, and this is a biased choice, and, be that as it may, but my final choice is Royal Rumble 2014, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It was my first and up to this point only Royal Rumble event I've attended. It was, I think, the third pay-per-view that I ever attended for WWE, and this is the first time I ever had floor seats. I mean, this is real inside baseball, but I attended at the Blue Line Grill, the LeBar Matt Hardy pre-show thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny that, I didn't even he didn't know me, and I was just there as a fan. And a little over a year later, I'm interning with him, and then the following year I'm on Chair Shot, and I know you, and we're at SummerSlam in New York together, and you just never know what happens, and it's crazy how that all turned out. But this show, even if it's, a homer pick for me, it has one of, if not the best opening matches in Royal Rumble history, with Bray Wyatt defeating Daniel Bryan. The Lesnar Big Show match, which was not really much of a match, but it was unique, especially since if you watch that show, the former name of my YouTube channel, I had a sign for that, and I was putting it up at any time they had a shot in the corner. And literally every time Lesnar took Big Show outside, it was at that corner. So I had my sign up over and over again. And people, even as recently as last year, were being like, "Hey, I saw your sign at the Royal Rumble. Was that you?" And I'm like, "Yes, it was me. I can't believe you saw it." So it was really cool. And of course, I always thought this was unique because I mentioned it earlier, the 60-minute Iron Man match at Bragging Rights 09 between Orton and Cena. And 5 years later, we get another Orton-Cena match for the world title. But I would be remiss if I did not mention Batista winning the Royal Rumble. This is a time where everybody wanted Roman Reigns to win. And it's funny because they didn't pull the trigger here. They pulled the trigger in Philly the following year when everybody was already fed up with it. And they should have done it the year prior. Rey Mysterio gets booed out of the building. Just so many moments here. CM Punk's final match in WWE for almost 10 years. Hell of a show when you look back at it. But in the moment, I had a great time. I remember just the weekend being super exciting. I got to go to Ring of Honor the night before. I got to interview Kevin Owens and Kevin Kelly. And I got to see Chris Jericho at World of Wheels. It was just a wild, fun weekend for me. And it kind of launched my fandom into another stratosphere. So I had a great time there. I'm sure you'll have some stories too. So 2014 Royal Rumble is probably my homer biased number one pick.
Yeah, and that's fair. I think whenever you see that, you always think about Batista winning because Pittsburgh tried to take over, when Daniel Bryan was not announced as, the final entrant, and Rey Mysterio just got booed out of the building, which might have been the only time he's ever gotten booed that loud, at least.
Which is crazy because I think the other day I brought up, it might have been with Drew. I don't know who it was, but we were talking about Rey Mysterio never being a heel.
Yeah.
And it's crazy. He's never been a heel, but he absolutely got booed out of the building, and they probably were like, "Man, sorry, Rey, we could have had someone else in there, but you were last."
Well, I would say 2014 was definitely a memorable one for me. Going back, on my fandom, on just every 20, 25 years, there's somebody that you get attached to, a wrestler, a performer. So this one's definitely close to my heart. I think the Royal Rumble 2020 was just incredible. It was the last, well, aside from the Elimination Chamber the following month, but the last real big event before COVID, where you had a tale of two tapes during the Royal Rumble match. Brock Lesnar destroying everybody really until Drew McIntyre came out. And Drew McIntyre eliminates Brock Lesnar. That crowd goes absolutely insane. You still think this could be Drew's time, but he has to face Roman at the end. And I think it's the Monday was the 5-year anniversary of that Royal Rumble in 2020. But whenever you look at that, you have that match. You have obviously The Fiend versus Daniel Bryan, which I thought was a really good match as well. Getting to a point where The Fiend was kind of untouchable. So whatever you put The Fiend in, he was an attraction. He was kind of like The Undertaker, where you didn't need him to have a championship to feel important. So I think that match was really good against Daniel Bryan. And then you also just think that entire 2020, the return of Edge, that was a moment for me as an Edge fan for many, many years, not ever thinking he was going to come back. And lo and behold, he comes back. He may have separated the shoulder of AJ Styles along the way, which, would set up their match. But I think 2020 was something that you look back at, and there were so many critical moments in multiple matches and memorable moments and returns. There was everything that a wrestling fan could have wanted in 2020. So that's why, for me personally, that was probably my favorite Royal Rumble, and one that I can always remember and always go back and watch. And I mean, hell, even the very small interaction with Randy Orton and Edge in the ring when Orton's trying to turn on him, and Michael Cole goes, "You better strike the Viper before the Viper strikes first," or whatever he said. And it's like, okay, like you're going back to that rated RKO, which, diehard fans remember that. It wasn't long, but it was fun. A lot of great things in 2020.
Oh, man, absolutely. And you want to talk about Mark? My AIM name was rated RKO 519. So you could tell it was in 2006, considering May 19th was the back end of it and rated RKO was the front half. So
mine was Booker T Playa 15. I had like
I love
20,
how there were.
That was
I love how there were 14 other Booker T players before you.
Apparently, yeah.
But dude, 2020, I remember exactly where I was because I was in California. I had moved to California, so I remember watching that show. That was the day that Kobe passed away, and it was such a crazy just like day mentally. And even though like that happened and stuff, it was like, well, I have the Royal Rumble to look forward to. This is something you always look forward to as a wrestling fan, and for it just to be such a topsy-turvy day, and then for Edge to come back, like of all things, like one of the things you never thought you would see happened. And I joked about it earlier, anything can happen in the World Wrestling Federation, but it was something that you truly never thought could legitimately occur because of the severity of the injury. And as a huge Edge head, as well as you, it was just a great moment. And I love that Lesnar was in, even though he was champ, and still got his ass kicked out. So, he dominated the first half of it. It was just a great overall show. I definitely agree. And it set in motion a lot of interesting stuff before the pandemic hit and really turned things around. So fun first little segment there with our 5 favorite Rumbles as a whole. That'll probably be the longest of the 3 little segments, considering we're talking all shows, and we didn't, I don't think, overlap actually at all.
Yeah.
So we'll talk 5 Rumble matches and then non-Rumble matches after. But I do want to mention this, and this is absolutely some exciting news here for the Juice Box. We here at the Juice Box are going to be teaming up with Pool Party Gaming, which is a sports pool platform where, it's I only like to compare it to Wrestle Rumble because they were really the outlet of, gambling to an extent of where you can put your money where your mouth is if you really think you know wrestling. But Pool Party is a little different. It's free to play. It's free to win. And they are actually dipping their toes into the wrestling world. So for the Royal Rumble, specifically, there will be 25 questions with a tiebreaker sprinkled throughout because, somehow, some way. Some two people are going to somehow get everything the same. And it's going to happen. And, here at the Juice Box, we're happy to, I guess, have it as a sponsor. And we're going to promote it a little bit more when we do our Royal Rumble predictions later on. And, of course, through social media, it will be out there as well. And the details are still a little light. We don't know exactly what the prizes will be, but we're definitely in talks. And like I said earlier, free to play, free to win, no risk really, and it's just for fun. But when you win is more than free. So it's absolutely worth checking out. The links for all that will be through my social media, Josh's social media, and we'll take care of that by the end of the week. And I will say this. They say that they're dipping their toes into the wrestling world. Royal Rumble will not be the only event that they do. I'm sure we're going to be doing something for Chamber, and we will absolutely be doing a pool party gaming collaboration with the Juice Box for WrestleMania coming up for Las Vegas. So keep your eyes peeled, your ears open, and your eyes focused on our social media accounts. So, and I'd like to throw it to Josh Isenberg, kind of help facilitate this whole thing if you've got anything else. Pool party gaming, man. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, they're great. The guys there at Pool Party Gaming have really taken over college football, the NFL, Pick'em, free to play. They've collaborated with a handful of really wonderful bars and restaurants in Pittsburgh. So it's not just Pittsburgh, though, So the prizes aren't going to be just selected towards Pittsburgh, even though this is our hometown. We love it here. But they do a great job at really putting together data. Their website, poolpartygaming.com. You can get in not just wrestling. You can get in on NFL, which now there's only one game left, but they do a lot of different sports throughout their platform. Excited to be partnering with them. And again, free to play, free to win some gifts, win some monetary prizes. There's going to be a lot of really great things in the future. They do, a stand-up job at really pushing the fact that, hey, we want to make sure that gambling, you don't have to lose a lot of money to win money, and that's the biggest thing is having fun. And I think Wrestle Rumble with Matt and the team did a great job for so many years. It was sad to see them go, but it's always opening up another avenue for somebody else. So this is going to be a really fun venture, and I'm excited to be partnering with them, partnering with you here on the Juice Box Juice. It's going to be interesting, and I'm excited now for our next part I think we're doing the top 5 Royal Rumble matches. Is that next on the docket?
That is absolutely next on the docket, and I will pass the buck to you. Give me your first favorite Rumble match. And this is just the Rumble match, so 30 entrants. I doubt you'll select 2011, which had 40 entrants, or dare I say the greatest Royal Rumble, which I doubt would even count in this, although it does have probably one of the most memorable moments in the history of WWE with Titus O'Neil, having a little slip and fall there, but that's neither here nor there. Josh, let's hear your first favorite Rumble match.
So 5-1 for me on this one. Number 5 is going to be 2001, which I talked about at extent earlier. Stone Cold Steve Austin eliminating Kane in that last match. Kane just went through and eliminated, I believe, 11 people in that. Kane was, at that point, you're thinking, when is he going to become a world champion again after that brief stint that he had? Dominated the Rumble, but it was all about Stone Cold Steve Austin. And then you had the fun fact of Drew Carey coming in, and, Drew Carey basically eliminating himself there. So 2001 for me.
Yeah, and like I said, you brought it up earlier. It's great considering Austin gets that third match win, and he's the only one to have 3 Royal Rumble wins. It's interesting because Cody won 2 in a row, so he's already really close to approaching that third Royal Rumble victory, but I'm just not sure if anybody will actually get there. However, when you talk Royal Rumble this year, and we're not going to predict that's going to be coming up later on this week, but you've got John Cena who has 2 Royal Rumble, Jesus. Randy Orton has 2, so you never know. Hulk Hogan has 2, but I don't think he's going to be in the Royal Rumble this year. But it's just very interesting to see, some of these guys are getting close, and only one has 3. So 2001, I think, is a very solid choice for sure. We also, this is a little sidebar, we didn't really talk about it, but winners by entry number I always thought was unique, because for a long, long time, and I'm only bringing it up because 2001 is a part of this. 27 was really the number to do it. And I think it happened before they really cared about stuff like this, before they started having the Rumble by the numbers promo before every Rumble. 89, 93, 94, and 01 had winners from 27. And I only say that they really never acknowledged it before because that for the longest time had the most winners, but currently the most winners by entry number is 30, and that's 07, 08, 2016, 2022, and 2023. So they definitely, took advantage of, well, let's see what we can do with that. Let's play with that. And now if you're last, you have the best chance, which is, of course, always assumed, but now legit, it's got the most wins out of any entry number. And I also would be remiss. So Cody Rhodes has 2, Edge has 2, Randy Orton has 2, Cena, Batista, Lesnar, Triple H, Shawn Michaels, and Hogan all have 2 Royal Rumble victories, but no one is touching Steve Austin. So a couple of the guys I mentioned have a chance this weekend, but I don't know if that's going to be the case.
Yep. We'll see. Time will tell, Juice.
Titan time, as they say. So let's dive into my personal favorite Rumble matches. We're going to start off with a unique one. I feel like not a lot of people will pick this, but I like when wrestling, specifically WWE, anytime they have a new match type, each time there's something new, there's something innovative with it, or they try a different finish, or, there's different ways to end the match. So with the Royal Rumble, I always felt it was unique where, Hogan, they dipped their toes into having back-to-back winners, right? And then in 92, the title was on the line. And then in 93, the winner of that gets a shot of the title at WrestleMania. What happened in 94, though, was the first ever tie. 2 men won the Royal Rumble in 1994. And damn it, I would be remiss if I didn't say the line that Howard Finkel said probably 5 or 6 times before they announced that both guys were winners. The winner of the 1994 WWF Royal Rumble was, and then they'd play Brett's music, they played Lex's music, and they did that like 3 or 4 times before he said both guys are winners. But this is a unique match. 94, you had Diesel getting 7 eliminations, which really kick-started the wow, like who has the most eliminations? This is the guy that's going to be the future, and he was. This is a beginning of 94. In November of 94, he ends up winning the world title off of Bob Backlund at Madison Square Garden. So you could tell, and the fans were kind of behind him as well. So you could kind of tell they were pushing Diesel to the moon here. You also had with Diesel the interesting Virgil interaction where Virgil comes in a house of fire and a little bit too much, a little bit of a shoot, if it were. He threw some interesting punches considering Virgil was a boxing background there, and Diesel was not having any of it and immediately disposed of Virgil. But love this match. I love the Randy Savage Crush interaction as well because they set up their match for WrestleMania 10. And the double winner, man, they accidentally hit on this in 2005 and it looked perfect, but they planned on this in 1994 and damn it, it was perfect. Luger and Brett, they had a great fisticuff moment for 10 seconds and then boom, they flip over. Both guys hit pretty much at the same time, and every angle that they allowed to show you definitely showed both hitting at the same time. And I love how they set it up when they threw each other's I think it was maybe, I don't know who the last couple guys were, but the last 4, Luger and Brett, both threw guys out over the corners to set up the final 2. So I love the whole match. Unique finish. 1994 Royal Rumble is my next choice.
All right, next one for me, I'll keep this short and sweet, was 2016 Orlando, Florida, AJ Styles debuting with the WWE as entrant number 3, and this was a Roman has to go through all, 1 versus all. Roman starts it. Roman gets very far along until Triple H's music hits, and then the final 2 guys are Triple H and Dean Ambrose. Triple H becomes the WWE champion. Just everything about this was great with the debut of AJ Styles, who would now go on to be in WWE for 8 years, winning multiple WWE championships, being in massive main events, and an incredible WrestleMania history that he has had with the opponents that he's faced. 2016, memorable for me, for the Roman Empire collapsing and getting it back a few months later, and the debut of AJ Styles.
And this is going to be really quick, considering I also have 2016 as one of my favorite Rumbles. This, along with 92, were the only ones that have the world title on the line, which I thought, really increases the stakes for the Royal Rumble. And you can't do it every year, but they had an opportunity to, and they pulled the trigger. And, Triple H winning is somewhat predictable, but I also enjoyed it because it was kind of a throwback. It was the Authority. It was, we're doing this. Like, we want to build Roman, but we got to have someone, for Roman to beat. And damn it, they made it Triple H, the King of Kings. And man, that AJ Styles return, I remember where I was watching that show and him coming out. You thought, you heard the rumors. But again, just like Edge returning, did you ever think AJ Styles would be in WWE? I didn't.
Yep. Neither did I.
So the camera didn't even see it correctly. They only showed Roman Reigns. So great match. I really enjoyed it. And I think it goes down as one of the more interesting ones, regardless if you're a fan of Triple H or not.
I agree. Yeah, next one for me is 2003, where Brock Lesnar defeated the Big Show in a qualifying match to start the event, and then would go on, obviously, to become the Royal Rumble winner. We talked about this a little bit as one of your favorite Royal Rumble pay-per-views, but Lesnar eliminating The Undertaker, really catapulting Lesnar, putting him up against Kurt Angle for WrestleMania. I think that elimination of The Undertaker really said to WWE fans that this is the guy. This is the new guy who is able to eliminate The Undertaker, who's been a staple at this point for so many years in WWE. They needed to create new stars, and boy, did they create a new star in Brock Lesnar. So that's why 2003 for me, Brock Lesnar winning, and then obviously what we've seen with Brock over the past 20 years, this is really the big one for him. Yeah, he was champion before, obviously defeating The Rock at SummerSlam a few years before this, but this really solidified Lesnar as once again the next big thing.
I can't hate that choice at all. And the next choice for me is something we kind of touched on earlier, so I'll make it short and sweet because my last two have more to bite off the bone than this. But 2020, like I said, crazy emotional day that day for a lot of reasons. And, the Royal Rumble's there to maybe alleviate some of that. And you get Edge returning, and it's such a great moment. And you also get the Brock Lesnar domination, like, you mentioned for 03, but 17 years later, he's the champion. He goes into it, which, again, I love when the world title is kind of involved, whether it's 92 or 2016 where it's on the line, or the actual champion putting himself in the match because he's a badass. I love that piece of business. So him going, 14 or 15 in a row, only to get eliminated by Drew McIntyre, who eventually would be world champion. And look where Drew McIntyre is now, man. So 2020 was absolutely a launching point for Drew McIntyre. And look, Edge, Adam Copeland, still wrestling today. So I'm happy that moment happened to get to where we are today.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll even say that was my number 2. So that's going to be a quick one. Everything that 2020 brought to us before the world shut down, just echoing all of your statements there. Drew McIntyre getting catapulted into another level, defeating Brock Lesnar, and then outlasting Roman Reigns. So I think at that point, everybody thought Roman was going to win once again, but they pulled the trigger on McIntyre. They have never looked back since then. That, again, a tale of two Royal Rumble matches. The beginning 20, 30 minutes where Lesnar dominated, MVP coming out. You see his Shelton Benjamin quick hug with Shelton before he tosses his ass over. It was a really good and very understanding of WWE knowing that we have to give this win to a guy who needs it. And Drew McIntyre needed that win.
Absolutely. And yeah, he's such a huge star now, but it couldn't have happened without, that type of moment in that Rumble specifically. I've got 2 more to go. My next one, I mentioned Madison Square Garden before, but we have not mentioned this show yet. 2008. And man, this was one hell of a Royal Rumble match. The show as a whole was kind of hit or miss, but the main event, the Royal Rumble match, John Cena wins. He had been out for quite a few months, and you knew, I'm sure he'll be back by WrestleMania, but nobody, not dirt sheet writers, not super mega fans, probably not a lot of the talent outside of, Vince or higher ups, knew that it was possible that John Cena could return in the speed that he did. And the moment where he comes out is, you get chills thinking about it. He has that signature pose of him, hands across and head down, showing that he's there. And Triple H's face tells the entire story. Yeah, flabbergasted. Great word for that. You also get a moment where CM Punk's in the ring, kind of a downtime, and you get Piper and Snuka having a one-off. And, Punk just marking out being the fan of 80s wrestling like we all are, seeing those two guys in the, twilight of their careers, having a little moment in MSG. Man, such a fun moment. And look, I think that even though Cena probably got that, actual respect factor from a lot of fans, maybe in that U.S. title run 2014, 15, 16, where people got over the hate. Yeah. This moment here, I think, kind of started that to be a possibility because Cena had been so stale to fans. He had won every match. It was Cena wins LOL online, you know. And this moment, no one thought he could come out. He comes out, he returns, he wins. I think a lot of fans kind of realized this guy really loves wrestling and WWE and doing whatever he can to make sure the fans go home with a memorable moment. So I think a lot of respect, hustle, loyalty, and respect were earned when Cena came out here. So 2008 for me is a huge one.
Yeah, and mine is obviously going to go back to what we talked about before, 2007 with Taker and Michaels. The trickle down effect of how those two guys were in the ring, the last two Texas natives battling it out for a chance to go on to WrestleMania 23 at Ford Field in Detroit, which was my first WrestleMania, seeing The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels finish that out. And it was really also a great Royal Rumble match with Michaels and Taker finishing it off. But they started hot with the Ric Flair. They had Edge early on. They had Kane and Punk and all these guys and Randy Orton that you're thinking to yourselves, are these the guys that might be the next guy in line to be a world champion? But they had to go back to Taker and Michaels at the Royal Rumble, which I loved. Again, it's amazing that the Royal Rumble match is always just chaos. But when you can carve out 5 to 7 minutes for the final two to really battle it out, kind of similar to what they did with Cody and Gunther a few years ago, give them some time to tell a story in the ring that is separate from the Royal Rumble match itself, is special, and that's why I love 2007.
I can't deny any of those points. It was very memorable. That closing 5-6 minutes of Taker and Michaels really stand out. And, you put that literally the final two of a Rumble, you put that moment and segment in front of a lot of other matches, and it's, it holds up just the same. So It's pretty wild. And like we touched on earlier, what it eventually kind of set up, whether intended or not, is, you can't deny that. So I'm glad that it happened because we got two incredible WrestleMania matches later on. Now, my favorite Royal Rumble match, it can't be a surprise for many. And I think a lot of people will have the same sentiment. Who knows if you do or not, but number one for me, I didn't watch it live, but I've seen it probably 50 so times. Royal Rumble 1992. Ric Flair wins this thing as the number 3 entrant. I had 93.7 The Fans Donnie Football on for a Sip Series episode, and he mentioned that fellow co-host of the PM team, Andrew Filipponi, was actually at that show, Royal Rumble 92, which is mind-boggling. Knickerbocker Arena, Albany, New York. Flair comes out as number 3, and like I said, this, along with 2016, the only Royal Rumble matches to have the world title on the line. Flair comes out at number 3. Heenan is the biggest supporter of Ric Flair. He brings him in 91 as the real world champion. So it's still kind of, raw, lack of a better term, on Flair leaving the NWA and WCW with the world title that he had a deposit on and making waves in WWF. But he comes out at number 3, Gorilla Monsoon, he's finished, Brain. There's no way he's going to do this. And Heenan's like, it's not fair to Flair. And that you hear that line countless times over this broadcast. I also think this Rumble match in particular is Bobby Heenan's magnum opus as a commentator. It is a wild ride. It's an hour and 2 seconds of incredible excitement. It's so dramatic. Ric Flair ends up winning the whole damn thing. You set up Sid Justice and Hogan for WrestleMania. It's just a wild ride, man, and it never gets old because Ric Flair, even though he's a heel, you've respected him for who he was coming from WCW, and for him to actually win this is so shocking, even looking back at it over 30 years later. It's pretty wild that they pulled the trigger because it shows that they actually respected another company, even though, it wasn't them. WWF didn't create Ric Flair, and yet they had enough confidence to give him the world title because that's how big he was.
Yep, absolutely. And as we go into the final part, the top 5 non-Rumble matches. So these are matches that are not obviously the 30-man or 30-women Rumble matches. There's a bunch of them that I really had to filter through and think which ones really stood out for me, which ones made me a fan, which ones kind of go into the history books of memorable moments, great matches. I'm going to kick it off real quick here. Hardy's, Dudley's, WrestleMania 2000. I think they really
Royal Rumble.
Or excuse me, I don't know why I'm continuing.
You've been doing that this whole. That's how big Royal Rumble is, man. It's WrestleMania 1A.
Yeah. Royal Rumble 2000. My apologies. Royal Rumble 2000.
And it's been 2000. You must really like WrestleMania 2000, which people, I think, universally will actually disagree with you. It's like
I didn't like WrestleMania 2000 at all.
Outside of the ladder match.
No. But I think the Hardys and Dudleys set the standard for tag team wrestling at this. They had their No Mercy match. I understand that. TLC at WrestleMania 17 obviously was big. But I think this match, inaugural tag team tables match, you still saw that tag team wrestling was electrifying, and you don't need to be the world champion to steal the show. So number 5 for me is the tag team tables match between the Hardy Boys and the Dudley Boys.
That's a hell of a choice. We talked about the Royal Rumble 2000 earlier, and I'm going to bring it up now just to piggyback off that. Triple H, Cactus Jack, street fight. Madison Square Garden. The build up to this was wonderful, where Triple H and Mankind were having a feud anyway, and he felt, well, I don't think you're going to see Mankind. And Triple H was like, what are you talking about? And when Mankind tears off the shirt, and you see you're going to face Cactus Jack. It was an introduction to a character that had been world renowned and seen in WCW, seen in ECW, but never touched on in WWE. You'd only seen Mankind, both good and bad versions, and Dude Love. You never saw Cactus Jack. So to see this was wonderful, and the match was insane. Triple H gets a insane gash on his calf from a wood pallet in the entranceway. It really proved that Triple H could hang with anybody. I kind of hearken it back to Orton and Cactus Jack from Backlash 04. This match made Triple H a true, respectable badass in the ring. So they tore the house down, and then a pedigree on the thumbtacks is just insane. So that's
my number 3, Juice. So we're on the same page as that. Yep, the brutality of that match. The fact that Triple H finally showed that he can be hardcore, right? I think for so many years, Triple H in DX was a comedy act. He became champion, but he needed that one moment. And what better of a moment than him facing a hardcore legend like Cactus Jack? So that's my number 3.
Yeah, good choice. So I will kind of go to another different match here. This is a unique one. Royal Rumble 1993. Bret Hart, Razor Ramon. These two guys never really got too many opportunities to go against each other, and this is early in the Razor Ramon career in WWE, but this match is a damn clinic. I love the gear that Bret wore in this. I think it was all pink for this match. Great technical match, technically sound. Bret, of course, gets the win, and I remember the VHS cover for this show having the two guys on the front. And, Razor Ramon, Scott Hall never won a world title, but this is probably as close as he got legitimately. And I think it set up Razor Ramon to have a great career. Bret Hart was just kind of beginning. I think this is his first pay-per-view title defense because he won the title in late 92. So I love this match, and I think it's a great one to revisit every now and again.
So I know that we were going to actually agree on things. I didn't think it'd be our matches. I was thinking more of our pay-per-views. This is my number 3 for everything that you said, because it is amazing when you think about Razor Ramon, Scott Hall never winning a world championship. And I mean, the guy looked like $1,000,000, right? Like, he was strong, he was tall, he was athletic, he was technical, but he had the perfect dance partner this night. And I think that really made me believe in both men moving forward in the careers that they had. Obviously, one became a multiple-time world champion. One became, one of the best tag team or even stable guys and really changing the history, the course of professional wrestling whenever Scott Hall went to WCW. But he is so underrated, I feel, with his early tenure in WWE before, because he made all the headlines going to WCW. So for everything that you said and those few other pieces that I brought up, I think this one is always a great watch. Like you said, a clinic in professional wrestling at a time, again, where they were trying to find who that next big star was. They just didn't realize that they had 2 stars that were already ready to go.
Absolutely. And that's a great last point you bring up, because, Bret had just won the world title for the first time. Razor Ramon, and, he became a huge star in WWE, but then really took over as he made the transition back to WCW. And Bret Hart had a huge next couple of years running, really being at the top of WWE from 94, 95, even through 96, and, of course, his last year in 97. But this is where it really picked up steam. So I'm glad, you had the same match there. Very unique that we're actually agreeing. But, right. I got 3 matches left. I think we touched on this briefly, but I'm going to bring it up again. 2017, John Cena, AJ Styles. These guys are wonderful dance partners, as we've brought up with a lot of these other matches throughout this show. And I know they had another match at SummerSlam, but damn, this match was insane. Cena getting a huge title win here. Was this his 16th win, if I'm not mistaken?
That sounds right. Yeah, I think so.
I think this is which is nuts considering where he's at now, still looking for 17. But this is a clinic. And for AJ Styles, like we brought up earlier, he was just debuted in the WWE a year earlier at the Royal Rumble. And within a year, he's wrestling arguably the GOAT with the world title on the line. And he's defending it, it's a huge deal. And Cena gets a huge win. I love this match. So Cena AJ 2017. Go ahead, Josh. What do you got left?
That one was really at the top of mine, just missing it. I swapped that one out. Well, other ones as well, but that one was right there. I think one of the best triple threat matches took place at the Royal Rumble in 2015 with Brock Lesnar, John Cena, and Seth Rollins. And this was before Seth Rollins cashed in and became who Seth freaking Rollins is now. They needed Seth Rollins in this match to make this match special. We've seen the Brock Lesnar, John Cena matches over the years. We've seen them fight. Hell, we even saw them a month after Brock Lesnar returned, where John Cena beat Brock, and then obviously Brock, getting his comeuppance at SummerSlam and just destroying John Cena later on in their careers. This match, to me, had everything you wanted from a physical aspect, an aerobatic aspect of Seth Rollins. And it's funny because Rollins at this point was still trying to find who he was. And I really do think that this match made WWE realize we have to pull the trigger on Seth Rollins. And then you see Seth Rollins cashing in his Money in the Bank contract in one of the best WrestleMania moments of all time at WrestleMania 31. So this match always holds true to me. You go back and watch it. It is just nonstop action for that 15, 20 minutes that they had in the ring, and a very memorable night for all 3 men, but more specifically for Seth Rollins.
Great minds think alike. Lesnar, Cena, Rollins, 2015, I'd say, is arguably one of the greatest triple threat matches of all time. Outside of maybe a couple of WrestleMania matches that we've seen. But yeah, man, this is a sprint of sprints. These guys are going crazy. The Phoenix Splash is hitting this thing or is at least tried. I can't remember if he hits it or not. There's the first like 5 minutes of this thing are just Lesnar going crazy, Rollins flying all over the place. Like yeah, they're bonkos. So yeah, man, I could not agree with you more. Is that all 5 of your matches?
The last one that I had was The Rock and Mankind at Royal Rumble,
Oh,
1999. That's my
go
last
right
one.
ahead. Let's hear it.
Which is, I mean, man, the chair shots to the head in the middle of the Attitude Era. The Rock going through some medical issues because he wasn't wearing his typical trunks. He had the track suit basically. The clever finish of The Rock voicing Mankind's "I Quit" from I think it was a week or two previously on Monday Night Raw. This match just was physical, was intense, was gruesome, and at that time, you didn't think you could see even more physicality in the WWE, but this provided everything you wanted. And again, maybe one of the most memorable matches for both men that we've ever seen, aside from maybe whenever, Mankind won the championship on Monday Night Raw, that really shifted WWE over WCW, as everybody knows. But this one was just everything about it I loved. It was physical and it felt real. And that's the best part. To feel real.
Yeah, and if you have not seen the movie Beyond the Mat from 2000, it has this match heavily, heavily featured in it. And you see Noelle Foley and I believe Dewey at the time with their mom watching this match from the front row. Every single unprotected headshot to Mankind, Mick Foley with a chair is brutal. And his hands were handcuffed. Like there was really no blocking it.
Yep.
I love The Rock's tracksuit look. Even if it was like due to a circumstance, I think it's an iconic look. I think he kind of flourished looking like that because he was always an athlete first before he was a wrestler. Like he was the athlete's athlete where he's going to wear Adidas or Nike. He's just like the top physical condition. He's The Rock. He into football, but he was always absolutely just a top tier athlete, even when it came to pro wrestling. And this, no different. And just a brutal, brutal match that I hope, they'll never do something like this again, of course. But wow, I couldn't agree with you more. However, my choice and final choice here as we close up shop on this special Royal Rumble retrospective here on the Juice Box with myself and Josh Isenberg. My final choice is from my Homer choice of PLE, which was 2014 Royal Rumble, the opening match, Bray Wyatt, Daniel Bryan. This was so interesting because earlier in the month, Daniel Bryan was an honorary Wyatt family member. He had the jumpsuit. It was all but over. And then he turns that around and becomes, he's just not, he becomes Daniel Bryan. He becomes a guy that the fans can believe in. It's before the Occupy Raw stuff. It's before the Yes movement. It's before he, Yeselmania. It's before in the same show, he doesn't come out at number 30 and Rey Mysterio gets booed. All these things start with this first match because you think, and I thought as a fan, and I was there, you were there, oh, Daniel Bryan was in the first match. And sure, wrestlers have been in any match on the card and are also in the Rumble, but he's in the first match. There's no way he's not going to be in the Rumble. And of course, we think he's going to win the Rumble because it's kind of set up like, man, it's Daniel Bryan versus the Authority. But it doesn't happen. But this first match is unbelievable. Bray Wyatt gets the win. And all I remember from this specifically is the suicide dive out to the floor from Bryan. But Bray catches him and that Sister Abigail into the barricade and then another one in the ring to win the damn thing. Just great memories flooding back from that. And it's crazy that Bray's not here anymore. Bryan has retired now twice since then. But man, what a wonderful beginning of the Royal Rumble 2014, even though we have fond memories of it kind of going to smithereens by the end of it. So hell of a overall show, I think, between you and I, coming up with 5 of our favorite Royal Rumble PLEs, our 5 favorite Royal Rumble matches, and our 5 favorite non-Royal Rumble matches that happened at the Royal Rumble PLE / pay-per-view. So any final thoughts on the Royal Rumble as an event as a whole here before we tackle later on this week the Royal Rumble 2025 prediction show?
The Royal Rumble to me is, if WrestleMania is a Super Bowl, the Royal Rumble is like the conference championship games in the NFL, because you get a little bit of everything. It's arguably one of the best days of the year as a pro wrestling fan, and I'm just excited to be there live in Indianapolis and excited to spread the word of the Juice Box, spread the word of our partners Pool Party Gaming about the fun ventures that we have coming up. I'll miss you there, Juice, and also happy birthday.
As we know, Josh, happy birthday. No such thing, but I will be happily on my couch watching the Royal Rumble and enjoying the 3.5-hour PLE as I do every single year. And I'll be envious of you being in Indianapolis, but I know you're going to have a great time. I know you're taking your dad. That's going to be a badass show for him to see for sure. And like you said, man, teaming up with Pool Party Gaming is a new venture here on the Juice Box, to be quite honest with you. Kind of happened out of nowhere. And even however this first PLE goes with the Royal Rumble, we're absolutely going to be teaming up and doing more with them going forward, whether that be Chamber, WrestleMania, what have you. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited that you brought that to my attention, and we're working with Pool Party Gaming to bring some even more fun to the home viewing experience of these WWE PLEs. So really appreciate you coming on here, Josh. Anytime is a great time to talk to you and talk pro wrestling, especially when it's the Royal Rumble. Like you said, the conference championship of the WWE. So for Josh Isenberg, I am Juice Springsteen. Tune in later on this week for the Royal Rumble prediction show here on the Juice Box. And of course, as always, follow him on Twitter at Josh Isenberg4. I'm at Juicy Steen. And beyond everything else, enjoy the Royal Rumble this weekend. And tune in next week for another edition of the Juice Box. That was the Juice Box with Juice Springsteen. Make sure to subscribe to the Juice Box wherever you listen to podcasts.